Hi everyone. So this will be my presentation for the paper Varial-Helly graph of a diameter problem on absolute retracts. I will first expose the problem considered. So this is about the diameter in a undirected unweighted graph, meaning the maximum number of edges on a shortest path. So this is a very basic graph parameter, but with several practical applications. For instance, for testing some sociological hypotheses like the small world phenomenon, also for minimizing the delay in communication network for transiting a message, etc., etc. So the message here would be that we want to compute it on potentially huge graph. And the good news is that computing the diameter is a polynomial time solvable problem. So we can do it actually in n times m time, where n is the number of edges and or vertices, sorry, and m the number of edges. This is a folklore algorithm. But if we look at it closer, it is not very satisfying because what this algorithm does is not just computing the diameter, but in fact computing the whole pair's shortest path, all the possible distances in the graph, whereas we are just interested in one of them, the largest one. There is also another approach, more theoretical for computing the diameter, which is Sider's algorithm, which does use fast matrix multiplication, but essentially this is the same idea. We are computing all the distances, and then we take the largest. I just mentioned it here because what is interesting with Sider's algorithm is that if you believe that omega equals 2, so matrix multiplication can be done in n squared time, then it tells you that this Sider's algorithm is optimal for dense graph, meaning that the hard case for diameter computation should actually be sparse graph. This is one of the reasons, not the only one, why a lot of recent works have been devoted to sparse graph classes for the diameter. Anyway, the question remains in both cases. Since what we are doing is computing all the distances, whereas we are just interested in computing one of them, then the question is, can we do better than that? Is there a clever way to compute the diameter? And the answer, it seems, is no. What has been observed by Chepoy and Dragan already 3 decades ago is that deciding whether the diameter is at most 2 is already at least as hard as some Dijon set problem, where you are given 2 families of set over a common universe. And you want to know whether you can find a set in the first family, which is disjoint from another set in the other family. So it's rather easy to encode this Dijon set problem as a graph. And it tells you that, well, if you want to improve the computation of the diameter, even just deciding whether the diameter is at most 2, then you need at least to be able to solve faster than the naive algorithm, this Dijon set problem. And here comes the bad news. Solving this Dijon set problem faster than the naive algorithm would falsify the strong exponential time hypothesis, which would have implication about the time needed for solving the satisfiability problem. So it gives you even a stronger conditional lower bound for diameter. Okay, so that's for the bad news. Here in this talk, we are interested in good news, meaning when does this hardness result for diameter do not hold? What are the graph classes for which we can compute the diameter faster? This is not a very new topic in graph theory. Actually, there are a lot of works, some of them quite old, which have evidence that you can solve the diameter faster in linear time or almost linear time on many interesting graph classes. In the recent years, these results have been improved. In particular, a lot of the graph classes which were known to be easier for diameter computation, such as trees or art or planar, are of bounded tree widths, and we now know an almost linear time algorithm for diameter computation graph of constant tree widths with an optimal dependency on the tree widths, same for click widths, and we have other example. We also have the breakthrough result of Cabello for planar graph, who managed to obtain a subquadratic algorithm for computing the diameter, which also generalized a lot of previous work. So this is, of course, a non-exhaustive listing, But what I would like to stress here is that in most cases, in most graph classes in the literature for which we know how to compute the diameter faster than the naive algorithm, often there is some kind of path-like or tree-like structure which we can exploit. Meaning that if we are taking a path or even a tree, it's not very complicated to compute its diameter. And what most of the work in the literature do is just to identify some kind of similar tree-like structure in the graph, and then to mimic the algorithm for computing the diameter on trees or on paths using this structure. Of all these results here, which I identified in blue, I put also one in red, which is a special case of interval graph. So interval graphs have a linear structure. So what I just said earlier is true for them. But they are especially interesting because if you consider some usual graph parameters, such as click minor, tree width, click width, etc., all these parameters are unbounded for interval graphs. So it's actually very interesting to try to identify which properties for interval graph on their own are sufficient for fast diameter computation. And in this respect, one such property, which is at the core of this presentation, is a Helly property. A Helly graph is a graph such that if you take any collection of balls in your graph of arbitrary radius and center, then if your collection of balls is such that every two balls intersect, then it tells you that there is a common intersection to all the balls, a vertex which will be present to all of them. And this is well known to hold for interval graphs due to their interval representation on the line. But this Helly property actually holds for many other graph classes studied in algorithmic graph theory, such as the strongly corded graph, dually corded graph, etc. What we proved recently with Theodor Dragan and Heather Guarnella is that the Helly property is sufficient for fast diameter computation. You can actually compute all eccentricities in a Helly graph in m square root n time. And you can even obtain linear time in many interesting subclasses, which also generalize the result for interval. Now, what we are essentially trying to do here in this article is going beyond this result. And why is it important to go beyond Helly graph? Because Helly graphs are already very general. It's actually possible to show that every graph is an isometric subgraph of a Helly graph. So they have a very rich structure. But still, there are also important graph classes which are not Helly. And in particular, if you consider bipartite graphs, then it's easy to show that the only Helly bipartite graph are the trees. On the other hand, you have important bipartite graph classes which are almost Helly in a way, such as interval B graph and chordal bipartite graph. So they are not Helly, but still they have a lot of similar properties. And then you may ask whether it should not be possible also to compute the diameter of graph classes faster than the naive algorithm. This brings us to the main notion in this paper, which is the one of retract. A retraction in a graph is just an idempotent endomorphism. So you are edge preserving, and if you apply the endomorphism twice, then you get the same image. A retract is the image by a retraction. What you can easily show is that a retract of a graph is always an isometric subgraph and also an isochromatic subgraph, which means that it also preserves the chromatic number. Some examples to have a better intuition of the concept. You can show that if a graph G is bipartite, then every shortest path in this graph G is a retract. Take, for instance, the shortest path here from 1 to 8. To obtain an endomorphism, a retract of which this shortest path is the image, what you can do is to mimic a BFS from one of the extremities, say 1. And then you will put all the vertices at distance 1 on the second vertices on the path. So you will have 2, 3, 4 mapped to 4. All the vertices at distance 3 on the third vertices on the shortest path. So 5, 6, 7, and you continue. Actually, you may stay blocked here because 8 is possibly not the furthest vertices from 1. Here, it's actually not the case. If you take 9, it's even further from 1 than it is from 8. And then what you can do is just going backwards. So you come back on the vertices before, and you come back like that, and you can do as many runs as you need. And it's pretty easy to see that indeed it gives you an endomorphism. And indeed, it is idempotent since every vertex of the shortest path is mapped to itself. Another example, a counterexample actually, would be a cycle in a wheel. If you take C5, it's an isometric subgraph of the wheel W5, but it's not a retract. And you can see that easily here because actually C5 and W5 do not have the same chromatic number. So C5 cannot be a retract. But there are actually more complex examples where you have an isometric isochromatic subgraph and still it is not a retract. That brings us to the notion of absolute retract. Intuitively speaking, absolute retract are the graph for which the necessary condition, isometricity and isochromaticity, are also sufficient for being a retract. So that is actually the formal definition. An absolute retract of a class C is any graph H such that whenever H is an isometric isochromatic subgraph of some graph G in the class, then H is automatically a retract of G. We showed on the previous slide that in particular, paths are absolute retract of bipartite graph. The relation with Haley graph is that Haley graph are actually a special case of absolute retract. So the definition is a bit different here actually, because this is for reflexive graph, meaning that you add a loop at every vertex, then you drop the condition for isochromaticity. But still, given the positive result which we know for computing the eccentricities for Haley graph, it is natural to ask whether the similar concept of absolute retract, but for irreflexive graph, so the normal graph where you don't have loops, whether we can also compute the diameter faster than the naive algorithm. And since, in particular, absolute retract of irreflexive graph can also be bipartite, and they do not need to be true in that case, it could help us to answer our original question, for instance, whether chordal bipartite graph admit a faster diameter computation algorithm. So our results are that for absolute retract of general graph, you can indeed obtain a faster diameter computation algorithm. The first result which we obtain is for absolute retract of bipartite graph, which are a bit simpler to understand. And we managed to match the running time for Haley graph. We obtain a deterministic n square root n time algorithm for computing the diameter. In the paper, it's actually written that it is randomized, but you can actually make it deterministic with some results we obtain with Dragan and Guarnera. And for some interesting special case, in particular the case of chordal bipartite graph, which are absolute retract actually, you can go further, you can compute all eccentricities, and you can do that in linear. Going further, if you consider the absolute retract of k chromatic graph for any k, then you can also compute the diameter in m square root n time. The algorithm is randomized, and it's a bit more complicated. But what is interesting to notice here is that the running time is completely independent of k. So if you consider the absolute retract of general graph, which are basically the union of all the absolute retract of k chromatic, then you obtain that for this graph, you have a m square root n time algorithm for computing the diameter. So I will explain a bit how it works for absolute retract of bipartite graph. The idea here is that if you want to compute the diameter of such graph, then you can just consider the half square. The half square are the graph whose vertex set is just one partite set among the twos, and an edge is put between every two vertices if they have a common vertex in the original graph. So here, for instance, you have the two half set of my graph here. If you take these two vertices, for instance, they have a common vertex, so they are adjacent in the half square. you can see it's a bit simpler, and it also explains the terminology. If you take the square of your graph, this is actually the graph which is induced by the partite sets. And what is not very hard to prove is actually a very general result, not only for absolute retract, is that well, there are actually two missing, I realize here, but fortunately in the paper it's okay. If you take the diameter of your half square and you double it, this is almost the diameter of your graph. This is either the diameter or the diameter -1. So you just have one here to decide. For general bipartite graph, it's not necessarily easy to know in which case we are, whether this is exactly the diameter of the half square or whether it is +1. But in fact, for absolute retract of bipartite graph, you have a simple criterion to decide. Here, I can illustrate it to you. If you take, for instance, my two half square here, they have diameter 2. And you can see, for instance, that this vertex, this pendant vertex in the red half square, has diameter 2, has eccentricity 2. And if you take this vertex, which is actually its neighbor here in the original graph, in the other half square, it also has eccentricity 2. So now, if you come back to your original graph, you see that you have a red vertex. This is a pendant one here, which has eccentricity 2 in the corresponding half square, and such that all its neighbors in the original graph are also of maximum eccentricity in the other half square, the blue one. And when this case happens, it's easy to show that you are in the case +1. So the diameter of your graph is twice the max of the diameter of the half square +1 in this case. But what it turns out is that for the absolute retract of bipartite graph, this is actually a necessary and sufficient condition for being in the +1 case. So either you find a peripheral vertex for one of the two half square, of which all the neighbors are also peripheral in the other half square, and then you are in the +1 case. Either such vertex does not exist, and then you are in the 0 case without the +1. So summarizing here, if you manage to compute the diameters of both half square and to identify all the peripheral vertices in this half square, meaning the vertices which are ends of diametral path, then just by looking at the neighborhoods of all the vertices in the original graph, you can decide what is the diameter of your original graph. So you have a linear time reduction who's computing the diameter of the half square. Now the good news is that if you have an absolute retract of a bipartite graph, then its half square are not arbitrary graphs; they are actually Helly graphs. This comes from this very nice characterization of Bandel and al., who prove that the absolute retract of bipartite graph are exactly the bipartite graph which satisfy a Helly property for the half poles. So this is almost the same as for Helly graph, but here you consider half poles instead of poles, meaning that you are taking the intersection of poles with one of the two partite sets of your bipartite graph. And it's easy, starting from this characterization, just 2 or 3 lines, to show that given an absolute retract of bipartite graph, both half square will need to be Helly graph in this case, because half ball for this graph would be essentially their poles. So you come back to the definition of Helly graph. So that's nice because we know already how to compute the diameter and in fact all the eccentricities of a Helly graph. So what is the catch here? The catch is that you cannot compute half square directly because it would be already quadratic time to compute them. You can see that easily because if you take a star, for instance, this is an absolute retract of bipartite graph actually as an trees. And if you take the half set which is induced by the leaves, then it is a clique. So you will have n square edges. So you cannot compute it explicitly. So here you have a lot of technical issues in order to simulate what you know to do for Helly graph, but without having at ends this Helly graph, just having at ends the bipartite original graph. So it's a bit more tricky. but it can be done. We generalize this result also to the absolute retract of K chromatic graph for any K. And here you have several additional technical issues. One of them, maybe the more natural one, being that unlike for the bipartite graph, you already need to compute a proper K coloring for this graph. And this is not an easy thing. It is actually NP complete for general graph. But it is known from a paper by Van Delt and Pech that it can be done in polynomial time for the absolute retract of K chromatic graph. We cannot use this result directly here because n squared is already too big for us since we want to compute the diameter faster. So one of our contributions to the paper is actually to prove that you can modify their approach using a standard greedy coloring, and it gives you a linear time algorithm to find proper K coloring. Once you have it, you can essentially do the same as what you were doing before for bipartite graph. So you will define certain notion of diameter for each color class separately, and then using essentially more complicated but similar tricks as what you were doing for absolute retract of bipartite graph, you can compute the diameter for each color class separately, and you have a similar argument as before for determining the diameter of the graph from the diameter of each color class. And you are done. Now, we went also a bit further in the paper, and we consider absolute retract of other graph classes. Here I showed you for K chromatic graph. You can also consider, of course, other graph classes. What we proved on one hand is that if you consider the absolute retract of split graph, then in this case, you cannot do better than the general case. So you cannot improve, assuming the strong exponential time hypothesis, you cannot improve the diameter computation for absolute retract of split graph. So that shows you that being an absolute retract is not necessarily sufficient on its own for admitting fast diameter computation algorithm. The graph class of which you are absolute retract also matters. And in the end, we also focused on absolute retract of planar graph. So here the motivation was that for planar graph, we already know that there exists a faster subquadratic algorithm for diameter, but it's open whether we can obtain a linear time algorithm for computing the diameter in this graph class. So what we proved in a way is that answering this question to absolute planar retract would already be non-trivial in the sense that there is a polynomial time algorithm which can embed any planar graph isometrically in such absolute planar retract. So due to lack of time, I will not have a lot of time to explain you how it works. But basically, the idea is that absolute planar retract are a special case of planar triangulation. So you can basically add some vertex in the different face of your graph until they are triangular, and add some additional vertex in order to obtain an absolute planar retract. It would deserve a bit more of discussion here, which I do not have. So I will just conclude here. Basically, what we proved is that we can, in a way, extend the result for Haley graph for diameter computation to absolute retract of irreflexive graph. They also admit a faster diameter computation algorithm. This follows from the fact that these graphs also have some eddy-type properties. If you don't have such properties, you are not ensured to admit faster diameter computation, even if you are absolute retract of some very well-structured graph class. So we gave an example for split graph. Absolute retract of split graph are still hard for diameter computation. In light of these two results, the question would be, could we identify even more general eddy-type properties for faster diameter computation? It seems from our result that this is indeed these eddy-type properties which make all it work. And it would be interesting to understand which of these eddy-type properties are really interesting for the problem of the diameter or over-related. That's all. I thank you for your attention. And if you have questions, I will be happy to answer them.